Thanks for joining me for another SONA Sessions, where we explore conversations with remote team leaders about what's important to them in building strong remote teams. I'm Danielle Snelson, CEO of SONA Events, where we create in-person experiences for remote teams, helping you make meeting up in real life easy, whether it's for an all-team offsite, retreat, or meetup. Today, joining me is Tyler Sellhorn. He is head of remote at ComSoar, the platform for community-led companies. Now, he is also the host of The Remote Show, We Work Remotely's podcast focused on learning from the best practitioners of remote work and remote hiring anywhere. So be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn, Twitter, and check out his podcast where you listen to your podcasts. Tyler, you are like the expert of experts.
Danielle, is amazing to be here with you. I am just so excited that we're here just thinking about that whole spectrum, right? Where we're thinking about, you guys are the experts on in-person meetups and I'm the head of remote here at ComSoar, right? And like this kind of like, why are you guys talking to each other? Like, well, because we want to do this on purpose wherever we happen to be, whether it's a digital space or a physical space.
For sure. Now, Tyler, something you and I have in common is that we love connecting people no matter where they are. And we love seeing relationships grow and build, which also helps companies grow and build. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so one of the things that I say, as the podcast host for a podcast that's representing a job board, like you might imagine that I talk to a few job seekers out there. One of the things that I say to people that are really after that remote job is that I say that it is not a worthiness problem, because you are the top one for some company in a particular role. And when we stop coupling vocation and location, right, we can start matching the exact person to the exact role that really fits them well. And that helps individuals and companies alike. And I think that's one of the things that I think is really cool about companies like SONA that are really doing the kind of thing where we're matching spaces with specific companies. And it doesn't have to be the same place every time, right? And I think that's one of the things that's really, really interesting about this new, paradigm of living and working and, being in spaces that are well suited to each of us, instead of the tyranny of the mean of like, well, we're all going to be in, a beige cubicle farm together because we all happen to be able to drive to this place. It's like, let's reject that, right? Let's have, really, really fun and enjoyable and well suited to our companies and to ourselves for where we work from.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to remote work anyway. There's a lot of pros and cons. We all know this, right? But we're going to be talking a lot more about intentionality and helping make remote work stay in the pros section and not the cons section is being intentional about our time together. Whether we're actually in person, maybe we're on Zoom, maybe there's, different ways that different companies are helping bring people together. But behind all of those activities is intentionality. What are you seeing that you would say this system, this process, this schedule is full of intentionality and it brings our people together whether they're at home or they're in person? What does that look like?
So my shorthand for this, there's a whole spectrum of things here, but my shorthand for describing this deal is to say that asynchronous time is about the work. Synchronous time is about the connecting, and in-person time is about the hugs, or your preferred way of whether it be waving from across the room, or like, as I'm like a really big person. Okay, so like obviously I'm in the Zoom box right now, so like you can't tell that I'm 6'4", 260 pounds. Like I'm former college offensive lineman, right? So like I'm somebody who loves to. There's plenty of me to go around. I love giving out hugs. So like, if you're a hug person, buckle up. I would be happy to provide you one of the best you've ever had. But if you're a fist bump person or a wave across the room person, or like I'm going to sit on the other side of the table from you person, that's great too, because it's one of these things where there's different modes that are better suited to different things, and there's trade-offs all the way along the spectrum. And that's what we're saying when we say that there are pros and cons to every version. Well, when we are intentional about what we're trying to do and choosing the tools and the spaces that we are best suited to those tasks, for example, most of the time we're going to be doing some amount of knowledge work. That's better done in our own spaces, in our own time, with our own thoughts. But connecting with others and like being connected as people, that's best done in person. That's best done breaking bread together. That's best done clinking glasses together. That's best done laughing out loud inside of the same four walls, right? And so it's both and. It's not either or. I think so much of the conversation around remote working, especially during the pandemic, has been this like in the office or at home, and that's all there is. And it's like, that's really no. There's a spectrum of choices, and when we intentionally choose the right place for the right task, we will have a better outcome. And that's what we need to be focused on, is what is the outcome that we are trying to achieve here? Let's focus on that and then choose the place and the mode and the tools that suit that task best.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we're not being intentional about how we're building connections, then the remote stuff sometimes doesn't work out so great, right? Because that connection and those relationships and building that is so important to driving results and productivity. If we're not focused on bringing people together or building our people up, then that's when the loneliness creeps in. That's when the feeling disconnected creeps in. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So
we don't want that at all. I think it's really important that we are strategic about this very thing that you're describing. We're not going back to the way it was. Sorry if you're listening to this hoping to hear that the head of remote is going to tell you that you can go back to an office. That's not me. That's for another time. But no, seriously, what we need to do is we need to say to ourselves, okay, managers and their direct reports probably should meet each other pretty early on inside of an employment engagement. That probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it might not match up with the schedule that you have for your remote retreats. Like you might have hired somebody right after you got back from the retreat. What are you going to do about that? I think there needs to be a plan for companies that are operating remotely to deal with that trust building, that connection that is missing when we don't get to see one another in person. I'm an example of somebody who got hired in July and then went on a retreat in November and then got promoted in December. Well, like, okay, there's some correlation there that probably makes a lot of sense. It's like, oh, this guy's more than we thought we had hired. Well, we should elevate that person. I think it's really important for us to recognize that there is something missing when we don't meet in person. And that's not to say that we can't adjust for that and deal with that, and also like respect the fact that we probably should get together on a schedule that makes sense for us. And managers probably should meet their reports pretty soon on in their remote working time together. Yeah.
What's your advice for a manager with a full team of different, levels of time that they've been at the company? How often should they be meeting with them? And if they're a new person, how quickly should they meet, or how often should they meet, even if it's remotely?
I don't have a prescriptive, like, do this because it works. It's really very highly dependent on the company and the kind of margins that company generates, right? Because let's be real, whether it's an office or a retreat, in-person experiences are expensive. And so we need to decide what is the cadence that serves the business best with respect to the fact that it is a cost. Not only that, like if you start talking about like fully distributed organizations, like you're going to be dealing with visa requirements and there's a whole bunch of headaches that go along. And how do we make that equitable for people that can't attend? Oh boy, there's a lot of things that we have to decide and make decisions about. And there needs to be people that own that process inside of your team, whether that's, like actual physical people that are like, paid by your payroll, or whether it's a team like SONA that really does that work for you. Right. And I think that the more that we can be very, very specific and very you got to write it down. You have to say to yourselves, this is what we're trying to do, and this is what we're going to do to achieve that. And that is different for every kind of organization. It might be that like every manager needs to meet their direct reports within the first 90 days of them working. Okay, well, you need to decide like what has worked for you all. What did you need? Right? There's not a one size fits all with that, because the needs of every business changes.
Yeah, totally. As I think about bringing people together, and we're being intentional, but I liked your breakdown of what happens during async work and what happens during sync work, and then what happens when we're in real life. When you're together, what's the most intentional use of your time so that you can get the really important work done, but then also have the time to be building the relationships, connecting? What needs to happen in that essentially small window of time together?
I think you need to schedule every single part of your time that is together, right? Okay. There's a reason why summer camp has a lights out and a bugle call to get everybody up, right? And it might not be that we are going to get everybody up at the same time, right? But we're going to say, hey, we'd like for you, person that has come far west, to be here. Hey, you that has come far east, to be here. Like, we're not going to assume that you're all going to be able to wake up at the exact same time, right? And we might even pay for some of you to be present ahead of the week so that you can be present, with some jet lag, management. I mean, these are things that are, okay, maybe this isn't a secret to most folk, but the sun only shines on half the world at a time. Right? And the problems of time zones don't disappear when you all fly into one location. And so you need to respect the fact that these are people who need to eat, who need to sleep, who need to be alone, who need to be together, who need to get some of the amount of their work done so that they don't feel overwhelmed when they go back to work. And so you need to start with, okay, what are the non-negotiables of our time together? Well, we're going to have to eat together. And we're going to declare this is the meal that everyone eats together. And this is the meal that we're all going to have our small groups together. You got to decide what serves the purpose of this meeting. And for some organizations, it's going to be, there is a product launch next quarter. We need to get aligned on what is next. And there's going to be other teams that are like, we just had a launch. Okay, let's relax. Let's celebrate. Let's enjoy. Right. And there's going to be different, seasons of that sort of experience for every remote team.
Yeah, that's a really good point and a really interesting perspective as, from the inside of the company. For me as the outside of the company, someone looking outside in, working with an internal person, I don't always see the stressors or the internal business that's happening, or the cycles. Sometimes I'm like, oh,
well, I gotta say that those are things that I think that internal person needs to be bringing up to you.
Yes, I've learned
they need to be saying to you, hey, this is what's going on for us, and this is what we need from this engagement with you.
Exactly.
Right. I'm a full on like Priya Parker disciple, like the art of gathering. I'm sure this is like you're part and parcel, but like for me, like digital spaces, right, deserve to be well curated and have a spiky opinion about why it exists the way it does. And I think that's true of meetups too. And I'm sure that that's an experience that you all have. I mean, I'm gonna throw it back to you. Tell me
sure.
how does that work? Of like getting people to like have an opinion about like what their meeting is for, instead of like, we're just having a meetup. It's your problem.
I don't know. It was just scheduled, right? And we're just, whatever, we'll figure it out. Actually, that's a really good point, because what I've learned after working with different companies and different communication styles and different ways of operating is that time that happens during meetings or meetups or small group, sessions, whatever, is being able from the top down, defining what season you're in, what's happening in the company wide, right? I always think it's really important to hear from the CEO and having a session around mission, vision, all of those types of things. But then what? How is that being communicated into the managers who are then having discussions with their teams? For me, again, on the outside looking in and seeing how different people do this, I do see a lack of structure when it comes to content and then distributing it into smaller teams. And so I think it's really important to be intentional with why you're meeting, helping frame that conversation from the top, and then helping your managers feel successful in those small group sessions and meetings so that it all works together. That's where that time together, the work focus part, is really important, because if it's disconnected, managers are then not communicating. They're just coming up with their own things, right? And they're like, let's do team stuff, or like team building stuff, or like whatever. And you're like, this is cool, but like, you want it to all work together.
Yeah. Well, I think that like you start with things like who's going to be there, right? What is on the agenda, right? Like, how are we going to invite people to this? Like for me, I think one of the things that is really powerful for remote teams is at the end of a remote retreat, you declare when or about when the next one is going to be, right? You say goodbye with saying when we're going to be again together.
Yeah.
I think those types of things are like completely like ignored like by so many that like
that's true. You know why? You know why, Tyler? It's because people don't plan ahead. My favorite thing to do is at retreat, if it's for another retreat coming up, we put together a promo video of the next location. So people they're like, it's like this thing. Whenever we produce any sort of event, we love talking about the emotional roller coaster and surprise and delights, and how we kind of craft this whole thing together, right? And so it works the same with teams and like being offsite at a retreat. Everybody's sad the last day at breakfast, right? And so we surprise them with a really fun video, because it's like, we know they're going to be sad, so we want to lift them up.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, seriously, like teams need to like have that closing. They need to like grieve what has been lost with this gathering being over. Okay, so yes, obviously, my spouse is a therapist, right? So like I'm talking in very, very emotional language, but like that's true. Like this moment will never be again. What are we going to do about that? How do we feel about that? What are we going to say to each other about it? And how will we remember it when we do think of it again? And when we think of it the next time we're together, how will we talk about it? Yeah. There's going to be a new set of people, new reasons, new setting, and everything. Like, how is that going to feel? These are all things that are going to be on your mind and isn't on very many people's minds ahead of time.
I realize this actually is not part of our conversation, but you've gotten me thinking about some of this stuff. And, you know, we're talking about the back end of retreat, right? Well, what happens on the front end of retreat and coming together? It's building up inside jokes before they, you know, for everyone, so that when you're there together, it's funny.
That Slack channel that has just the people that are confirmed going, like that is like a real thing, and is so much fun.
And a countdown on Slack, that's a really fun one. Yes. I mean, Slack is actually really great for obviously scheduling
chat
things.
Applications. Let's zoom out. Like yes, open channels of communication that anybody can access at any time. Yes, I agree.
But I love. We talk about bringing the Slack channel to life, and that is one area that I really love, bringing the Slack channel to life, and you know, utilizing its functions for getting people excited and also closing the loop on the back end after retreat. But
of course. I mean, you're doing a disservice to the investment that you've made if you aren't taking the time to summarize, to recall, to take the time to like query, like, how was it? Like, did you like this part? Did you like that part? Should we do that again? Would you do this retreat again? Would you do it with SONA again? And hopefully the answer is an emphatic yes. Right? Like these are things that we want to be reflective on and say to ourselves, okay, yeah, that was good. And you know what? It is serving us to continue this engagement with a partner, or how we did it last time. And in fact, we would like to do it again. These are the things that we're going to keep the same. These are the things that we're going to adjust. And these are the things that we're going to jettison completely because it didn't work. It's not, you don't have to assume that everything has to come off, right? Sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay. Take it as a learning experience.
Yes. I love all of this insight, this perspective and conversation around this. Now, Tyler, as we wrap up, what would you, for somebody maybe in the early stages of hosting, planning a retreat, that internal person, maybe this is their first time doing this or meeting up in real life, what would be your biggest piece of advice to somebody from your perspective?
Over and above everything else, demonstrate your care and concern for the other people sacrificing time and location and all the things that go into traveling to a place. Demonstrate right away, like with the front end activities that we're talking about, at the beginning of the retreat, during the retreat, recognize that they are out of their usual, that they are not doing things like they usually do them. They are in a new place with new people, and they have never done it like this before. Everything's new. Don't lose sight of the fact that they're also going to have had an experience that they want to take with them, but they can't because it's over. Right? How do we manage those feelings around being disconnected from the usual? And once the usual becomes that place, being disconnected from that again. And I think that is why we get together, but it's also what we often forget when we do get together, that, hey, this is for a season, for a specific time and place. And we need to say hello to it, and we also need to say goodbye. And we need to be considerate of the fact that these people have sacrificed so much to be together. That my first remote retreat, like we did the icebreaker stuff, right? And so here's everybody lined up, right? Like, how far did you come to be here, right? And we're gonna say, okay, person closest, person farthest away, you're gonna shake hands, high five each other, and say thank you to each other for taking this time. And then on down the line, right? Everybody's saying that to each other. And then we just now the whole room is talking, and it's like these people have never been together, but now we're together. It's us, right, for this moment. And I think it's so important to express that in specific and general ways. Thank you for being here with me, with us.
I love it. I think that's really great, lasting information for someone. Tyler, how can somebody connect with you after watching this?
Hey, check me out at tsell.link, tsell.link. All my stuff is there. But I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm doing all the things. The remoteshow.link to get all the subscribing stuff to the remote show. If you're interested in appearing on the podcast, please, hit that button to pitch me. We're very, very interested in getting things rolling here. It's really exciting time for me, starting out here at ComSor as the head of remote. We're just trying to help community managers be successful and demonstrating their value to community-led companies.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Stay tuned for another SONA Sessions coming your way. See you later.